American teams are kind of leaning towards. So that's a little bit of an advantage for a rival.
I always love seeing the little mini metas that develop within best of 3s, best of 5s. We saw yesterday Obey Alliance versus Astral Authority, how the meta just shifted. We saw the last pick Thor coming out of Chaotic Purpose in that set of game number 3, a very important one. But going into picks and bans here, Soar already banning away Zeus, Sun Wukong, whereas Rival really not wanting to deal with the Susanoo in the jungle role.
I mean, completely reasonable. Eliminating the Susanoo and the Osiris means that its pressure factors are not going to have to worry about, but you can't get rid of all of them. Soar picking up that Raven, he's been notorious for first pick selection, and I mean, in the hands of either Kaden or it could potentially be going to Stormy Rays.
Absolutely, it's a very good flex pick, but whenever you're dealing with an aggressive backline penetrators such as Robin, you want to get that defensive support. So Geb being locked in for Rival right off the bat and trying to get a late game Hunter here in Rom. I like the idea. Maybe could have went for the Fafnir to synergize off of it, but I like the protection instead.
I think they're just looking for the survivability route and they really want that shield cleanse. That's going to be pretty crucial against the Robin considering that route. And the Thor being locked in for Soar just means that CC seems to be the game plan already. Comparing that with the Thoth, I mean, it's looking pretty solid for Soar so far.
A lot of longer range abilities here already between those two picks from Soar. You got the Thor on one hand with the semi-global presence of Anvil of Dawn. Again, you got the Thoth as well for Shalibar that can just complement so well once he drops that wall, extending the range of both his in-hands and abilities.
And there's another guy that we've been seeing all too often lately, the Camazotz, is going to be locked in for Rival. Rapio, somebody who really likes leaning towards those PC kind of heavy junglers.
You never really know if Gnome would bring that out in the solo lane either. He's been known to flex his stuff every now and then, bringing out the Guardians, bringing aggressive warriors, and every now and then he could be playing some of these assassins such as the Camazotz, but we'll see as the picks and bans progresses further. Medusa and Kurnos really targeting that away against Zaxi.
They're really not trying to give Zaxi any of those kind of comfort picks that we've seen him lean towards in the past throughout this split, but meaning that Rival, they don't have their solo laner locked in yet. Soar aren't taking any chances eliminating that Bellona.
Vamana being locked in, very safe solo laner for Gnome, can clear from a distance. Even if he gets outpushed by the Robin in the earlier stages of the laning phase, he'll safely clear under his tower with that Umbrella Ring. And there's one defensive support on Rival. They're going to complement that on Soar with the Sylvanas.
Sylvanas, Rival or Soar are trying to really combat into Rival with a lot of pressure already. That's kind of what Sylvanas is notorious for, establishing that early clear potential, which will be excellent combating against the Rom with those Astral Arrows.
And not only that, that just adds more pressure in terms of the crowd control. They have two nice stuns between the Thor and the Thoth, and then they got a huge AoE knockup in the Sylvanas. It's very difficult to really get out of that one, because once you get knocked up, the beats doesn't help you get down any quicker.
And this is what I'm absolutely loving about Soar's composition right now. Recognizing that they're going to have that clear potential with the Sylvanas, they're picking up that Chronos for the ADC, and Zaxi, this is such an excellent pick for him because it's going to allow him to be aggressive with that Sylvanas, but at the same time, he'll have a very strong likelihood of making it into that mid to late game stage where Chronos really prospers.
They're going to have great objective damage, great tower sieging as well with that Chronos. Sometimes when you look at magical hunters, you look at Freya, hard to push towers. Chronos, though, is really great at doing so with that accelerate. But Morrigan, last pick for Team Rival. It's going to be really interesting to see what option he goes for once he transforms.
I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities on the table. We saw yesterday on the PC side of things where Yaman kept opting for that secondary Camazotz ultimate off of adapting. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rival kind of leaning for the same thing in the side of console.
That's very true, actually. If Rival can get two Camazotz out there with a Geb, it's going to be a very backline penetrating composition, especially with the Vamana. This Ram as well will have so much safety to be able to basically cast in hands anytime he wants.
The only issue here that I would have with Rival is that they have a lot of single target damage, not really a whole lot of AoE burst potential. Meanwhile, you've got Soar, who has that CC lockdown possibility, so they can keep consistently poking away, and so Rival's gonna have to be really careful with their positioning and wait until the Geb shields really start coming online.
So who do you favor here in the mid to late game?
I would definitely have to favor Rival simply because of the Rom Camazotz combination, and you always have a Morrigan, and Morrigan is just so incredibly difficult to shut down if she can make it past that mid-game stage.
So how would you try to even shut down a Morrigan? Because we saw yesterday with Energy bringing that out onto Yaman, but he was still able to just weave his way through wards every single time.
I mean, it's the Loki of the mids, isn't it? Having that invis possibility just really opens up so many different avenues as far as gank potential and just keeping everybody on edge on the side of Soar they're trying to combat this because they do have the Thoth, they've got the Chrono, so the late game magical damage is there. The only concern is where is that physical aggression really going to come from? Thor and Robin, if it keeps going later and later, are really just going to have to default to being secondary frontline peeling possibilities for these two hyper carries.
That's very true, but Kaden on the Soar should be able to really rotate all across the map with his global presence, especially with a long-range Thoth coming out of Shaliber. But let's head into game number 1, Soar Gaming against Team Rival.
And this is something that they've been waiting for so long. Both of these teams just incredibly excited. You already know that Rival are just so eager for redemption. They've been waiting for it for so long, and this is their probably their last opportunity to really prove that they have what it takes.
Rival really needs to be able to try to get their first LAN victory under their belts. Last LAN, or the last previous 2 LANs that they were attending, they actually got defeated by Soar, and Zaxi left alone in a 1v2 in the duel lane. I like what he's doing by recognizing that he's going to lose his red buff. He's going to just steal away the 2 purple Ogre minions, getting some golden experience under himself.
And I like what Soar is doing with this mentality of already invading the side of Rival. Stripping away that blue buff from Gnome is going to make things really difficult for the Vamana, who's kind of mana dependent early on.
Especially considering Vamana already struggles early on, enough as it is, against such an aggressive bully god such as Robin. So you take the blue buff away from him, and Stormy Rays is going to be able to get his own. Now you're creating more of a level gap between Stormy Rays and Gnome. So I could see a lot of 1v1 potential that Stormy Rays could look to try to engage on.
Not to mention, having the Sylvanas start in that mid lane just ensures that the Thoth is going to be as safe as possible. Thoth, again, is not one of those mid laners that is pretty great at clearing early on. So if you have the Sylvanas there to force that lane pressure and just rely on Zaxi pretty much maintaining a safe positioning, I think all around it just benefits the team greatly.
We're going to see a little bit of a pause as one of the players does have some technical difficulties. We're going to be able to get back into the game momentarily here, but the first game between Soar Gaming and Rival we saw yesterday, Obey Alliance against Astral Authority, it went the distance, and there was nothing to really develop between these two teams in terms of, it was an even game, right? But this game so far, early on, we've seen a little bit of a disparity in the dueling from Soar, whereas they're leaving Zaxi alone, but they're taking advantage of it by negating the farm of Gnome.
I'd imagine, if anything, it's going to be Soar needing to take up that mantle of initiating or determining the pacing of the game. Because if they wait a little bit too long, then it's going to permit Rival to come online with that dual lane composition of the Geb and the Braum. And once these rotations start factoring in, things are going to become really hectic for both sides, but especially for Soar, considering that they're going to constantly have to worry about that Morgan.
And I'm also, if I'm Rival, I'm really worried about Kaden on this Thor. He has not left Gnome alone quite yet. It's already past the 2-minute mark, and he's been hugging the soul lane quite a lot, even getting his back harpies in the soul lane. They really just want to leave Zaxi alone to farm himself and get as much experience as possible.
It's not even so much targeting Gnome as much as it is they're also trying to take shots at Rapio doing this, because if they eliminate all that farm from the soul lane side, it's going to restrict how much farm Rapio has for himself. That's
true. We saw Homie Efe struggle quite a lot on the Camisots yesterday in the PC side of things. He could just not get any farm once we saw a lot of rotations in terms of shutting down his jungle. So a very similar strategy that Kaden is deploying in this game.
And Soar just trying to establish the fire elemental control, considering that Rival were able to secure those oracles early on. So all around, pretty even spread of the global gold.
Sitting at level 5, Kaden is positioning himself at that Fire Giant pit. This is what you really want to do as a Thor player, because you can use that ultimate to either dunk down soul lane or the mid lane. You create a lot of confusion in both lanes, and as Rival, you have to respect that global presence, and you might peel back a little bit more than anticipated.
Stormy kind of just trying to take up that same bully position that we've been so accustomed to seeing from these Robin players. I really want to see some big early game rotations from Stormy Rays, trying to root down the Morgan in the mid lane.
Speaking of rooting people down, Medieval Doc on the Sylvanas selecting to go for a very early sprint. Talk to me about the different relic selections for support and why he went for a sprint this game.
The mindset behind Sprint is that there's a few slows on Rival that can be kind of difficult to get away from, and plus, when you want to disengage as a unit, because Soar's composition relies a little bit more on staying together, If any of them tends to break off, then somebody's going to end up getting picked. So as long as they can survive as a unit, and that's exactly what Sprint's going to permit them to do.
And it seems that he wants to prevent, he'd rather go for the AoE team support relic rather than the initiating for Blink, because on the other side we see Jacob HL going for that Blink, trying to really get the most use out of his Cataclysm and knockup.
And that's definitely what you need to do on a Geb. You can't just sit back and allow the aggression to come to you. Rival need to be the initiators with that comp. They've got the Camazots, they've got the Geb, both excellent factors for starting up a fight.
We're gonna see Rival take some of these Oracles down. Soar, Medieval Doc is gonna get engaged on. Nice little dash from Jacob HL, doing a little bit of damage. He's gonna force out the sprint from Medieval Doc, and that's just gonna be a small disengage.
And it could have been a pretty dangerous situation, but it doesn't look like Rival's quite ready to give that one up just yet. They are going to fall back now, but this grouping from Rival could still be a little bit dangerous.
We're going to see a rotation actually from Watson in here as well, making a lot of presence. Now the snipes coming through, misses the second and the third. Diving onto this tier 1 tower, the bat out of hell coming through for the first blood.
That was an insane amount of commit just to lock down Medieval Doc, and there's really no response yet from Soar because they took out the tree. I mean, when your frontliner's gone, the best thing you can possibly do is disengage.
And I'm really surprised there. I actually thought that it was Gnome making the rotation, but it was Watson transforming into Gnome, going for those ability-based hits. Whenever you use Morgan, you want to get off your whole rotation before going into the ultimate, and there's a lot of interesting ability transformations that you can go for. You can go for Cadence Thor, does a decent amount of damage, but Vamana does quite a bit here at level 7 also.
Yeah, but the downside for Soar is that when a team expends 4 ultimates to lock down your support underneath the tower, and they can't really have much of a response because everybody else from Rival was disengaging, trusting that Rapio would be able to clean that one up with a bat out of hell.
And Rival did a great job about baiting that sprint earlier on with that Cataclysm knockup combination. Very aggressive dash from Dobson as well after they got those Oracles. It just seemed that Medieval Doc was slightly out of position. He probably wanted to drop a ward somewhere around that side of the map, but it was just a little too late.
Well, Medieval's certainly going to have to be a little bit more careful about his pathing, and there's the ward that got him in trouble in the first place. And Rival, I mean, I love the initiative there that they took up. They're certainly not just looking to sit back and let Soar kind of get away with the free farm.
Absolutely. These supports are both going to be pretty easy targets with the exception of Geb's shield, whereas Medieval Doc's sustain, it takes a little bit of time to get the full effect of the healing. You can still kind of burn through that if you have the burst damage. So I'm really looking for Soar Gaming to make sure that if Medieval Doc goes anywhere in the jungle, that somebody's going to be relatively close to follow up.
Well, Rivals certainly have a lot of mobility available to them, and that swift wing pickup as well for Jacob HL is only going to permit him to rotate even faster.
We've seen a few roles actually pick that one up. We haven't really seen it in the solo lane because players will still opt to go for that teleport, but in the jungle we've seen that quite a bit. And in some supports, we saw actually an Athena support yesterday in the PC side of things pick that one up.
I mean, EU's just been loving the swift wing lately, and there's got to be some kind of strategy behind it because it seems to be working.
Mobility is key in SMITE. Even that 5% can make an impact. Medieval Doc not going to find that pull through the distance, but it's actually Stormy Rays caught out of position. Rapio finding the second kill for his team. Caden trying to find a response, but he elects not to dive in.
Better to not go all in right there, because even if he gets a stun off onto Rival, the way that he could get caught with CC out of position just isn't worth the risk.
So far, so good for Rival. They got the 2 kills, and they're controlling some of these neutral camps. Not really forcing anything quite heavily yet with the Gold Fury. They don't want to push any towers. They don't really have the damage necessary to melt them down, as well as all these respawn timers being so short, only at the 8-minute mark.
And there's only just the slightest goal lead in favor of Rival. Zaxi taking quite a lot of poke from that ultimate from Dobson, but he'll be just fine. I mean, it is Kronos after all. He probably still has his ultimate available to him, so nothing to really be too concerned about just yet. And
he basically hugged Medieval Doc for a little bit of sustain from the Wisp, so he's not going to be having any issues, even clearing the wave with a level 10 Kronos with a red buff. Pen Boots has finished on that Hunter. Going for the Bumbus Mask just to be able to get some more sustain in the jungle. Since he was left alone in a 1v2 quite often, it was very easy for him to clear some of those camps.
And here's that aggression that we're used to seeing from these 2 Hunters, both of them looking for the poke out rather than the clear on the wave.
And we're seeing a lot of aggression because I think that these 2 players have something to prove for one another. We really haven't seen the mix over between NA versus EU in the console world compared to EU. So this is going to be a relatively new matchup for Zaxi and Dobson. So they really want to see who's got the stuff.
And I mean, right now it's seeming like Rival does, considering their 2-0 lead. And granted, it's not much, and actually Soar with pretty efficient farming, closing that first blood gap.
They just can't find the stuff after the stuff, Rival. Despite getting some of these Oracle Harpies, despite getting some of these mid Harpies on top of it, it's just Soar controlling the pace of the jungle side. We saw Kaden just shut down a lot of farm from Rapio in that early game, shutting down a lot of that blue buff as well from Gnome, not being able to get the better end of that one, which is why we're seeing Stormy Rays feeling a little more confident than he needed to be. Finding that second death for his team was not something that he wanted to do, so I'm sure he's going to peel it back now.
They definitely got to keep an eye on Rapia, though, on this Camzons. That's certainly a god that can carry when given a lead. Soar, with an interesting grouping, they're ready to start brawling over these objectives.
I think they just want to bait out an engagement, maybe force out the Blink Cataclysm out of Jacob HL and then potentially look to re-engage. It's a little bit of a risky play, but it's going to be Kaden going into the sky, looking for Rapio. He's not going to connect onto anything. Also saving his hammer, shooting out the stun from Watson.
That was a very strong sustain, too, from Medieval, making sure that even if he did take that poke from the Morrigan, Kaden would be just fine.
And we're seeing a lot of engagement here yet again in this dual lane. Zaxi getting the better end of Dobson, just poking him out ever so slightly. There's no real sustain here, no gauntlets coming from the ROM. He's electing to go for the Ironwood branch.
I mean, it's safer for him to pick up this magical attack speed item because it makes it so much easier to combat with the Silver Branch Row, just because he doesn't have to worry about Zaxi having as much magical power whenever he's looking for those boxing scenarios. Plus, Zaxi and they're having to worry about a Thoth and a Chronos.
We're seeing Medieval Doc try to go for the pull. He's not going to be able to find a nice quadruple Cataclysm from Jacob HL. The re-engagement from Shaliber, but nice double knocker from Medieval Doc.
And it's going to be Shaliber with the ultimate, but it's just off the mark. It only lands at the Dobson, but he's up in the air, cleaning up Medieval Doc with his ROM ult.
That's going to be the third kill for the team, but a nice cleanup by Zaxi, finding one. So low is Watson on the backside. Shaliber getting a second kill for Soar Gaming, but not done yet. Stormy Rays diving in. He wants the third one, and he'll get it.
The Geb Shield isn't going to be enough to save the life of Rapio, and right now it's going to be Jacob HL on the run, but the mark was just off with that stun, and it's going to be Kaden actually falling in the mid lane to Gnome.
Watson and Gnome, they're not able to really get off the plays earlier on, but Gnome making the nice rotation this time around. This is what Vamana is truly capable of. Nice little stun by Shaliber from the distance, extending that stun range, but what was it, a 3-for-1 at the end of or 3-for-2 rather. Soar getting the better end of that one, but they're not going to find any objectives quite yet. A nice little bait onto the Jacob HL Cataclysm. I thought it was going to be a way bigger play from Rival.
It was so unfortunate for Soar that Shaliber wasn't quite ready with the final judgment from the Thoth off that Sylvanas ultimate. I think that would have been a completely devastating situation for Rival had he been able to connect with that off the two that were lined up from that Sylvanas ult. But all around, very strong counter engage from Soar.
It's very unfortunate for Medieval Doc that he wasn't really a part of any of those assists either in the team fight, because he does have Height of the Urchin completed, whereas we're seeing a little bit of a staggered Urchin from Jacob, considering he went for that Swift Wing beforehand, and that is going to allow this Geb to catch up a little bit once the team fights continue in about a minute's due time, really waiting on the timing of that Blink Relic to come off cooldown.
The sooner that he gets his stacks online, the sooner that Medieval can choose to be a little bit more aggressive with this Sylvanas. Right now, it's really just been Rival kind of initiating every single team fight, and that's kind of what you expect from a team that opts for Blink on the Geb.
But do you expect Medieval Doc to go for Blink at level 12 or a different defensive team relic?
I think that he could probably be safe, not opting for the Blink and just looking for a secondary active such as possibly a Frenzy or a Meditation. Even the Shell, I think could also be incredibly strong for Soar.
Frenzy wouldn't be even a bad idea, considering Kaden and Shaliber have a huge burst damage potential, and Zaxi is gaining the levels really quickly. He's sitting at level 14, highest in the game, tied with Stormy Rays, his solo laner that's been quietly farming after that early death.
And that's the concerning part for Rival, because if there's one thing you don't want to allow Chronos to do, it's free farm.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of free farming out of him. He's already completed the Bancroft's Talon, working on more mobility, going to be the wing blade more than likely. It's a great idea trying to limit some of the slow potential, especially against the Vamana, and you're looking at a Camazotz as well.
And not to mention the Geb, in case you get caught by that first ability, but it's actually going to be Zaxi trying to get caught right now on Jacob HL, but it's Kaden who ends up falling instead to Dobson.
Kaden couldn't really find the Anvil of Dawn that time around. Nice, clean pick from Rival, taking a lot of damage. Is Jacob forced to retreat? However, Soar get the slight objective. They get the Oracle Harpies to get more golden experience and that 1-minute vision around the Gold Fury.
And that's kind of what you want to see from Rival. Anytime that Kaden's looking to go in, you just immediately lock him down with that Morrigan stun and just burst him.
I really haven't seen Kaden do too much in terms of connecting some of his ultimates, and because Stormy Rays made this rotation, Gnome being of a mana that he is, he's just going to sit in this lane and completely split push, and that's what the goal is for either a solo or a hunter. If you can find the opportunity to split push the tower, you got to do it.
It's pretty unfortunate as well because that just opens up so much map pressure now for Rival. It means that when Gnome's making these rotations, he's not going to have to worry as much about a tower being poked out because even if he loses his T1, he's already taken Stormy, so what's he got to lose?
And as a solo laner, whenever you do clear a tower, you're sitting at level 14, you got some defensive items online, you want the rotations to come to your lane. You want more players in your lane whenever Gold Fury is available to allow your team to get that objective, get the gold, and make that play happen.
And I mean, so far, not really too much of a Gold Fury attempt from these two teams. Really just been either side trying to bait out the initiation. I'm a little bit surprised that Rival didn't look for much more follow-up after getting the clean pick onto Kaden, but it's probably because of how much they had to expend in order to shut him down.
I mean, if you think about it, both of these teams are coming into this game a little bit cold. They had to wait for Obey and Astral yesterday watching that game. They're still kind of feeling each other out here in the first game of this best-of-3 set. So I wouldn't be surprised if things picked up as the game progresses, especially as we're going to head into game 2.
Already, though, so much is on the line for both of these teams because typically whoever draws first blood has got the momentum to keep in mind. So neither side really wanted to start off the day with a loss.
No, not quite yet in the dual lane. Still looking for more trades. Zaxi has been getting the slight better end of Dobson. He is sitting at that 1-level margin. We haven't really talked about the mid laners too much, though, as we're going to see a different style of build. Spirit of Desolation here on the Morgan, whereas the Book of Thoth completed rather late by Shaliver.
Shaliver, and the kind of just idea behind the Book of Thoth is you want the power spike from that initial mana cost. And on Thoth, it could be a strong acquisition. He is going to be concerned, though, because Watson chose to find that power spike with the Spear of Desolation.
And the Spirit of Desolation is going to provide you a little bit of cooldown reduction, more penetration, so you're really looking for that really big burst. We're going to see an engagement here by Jacob HL with that Blink Cataclysm, but no one else can really cut the distance as quickly as the Geb, so he's going to have to retreat, and Kaden doing a great job zoning the rest of Rival with a clutch wall.
And now that these Geb shields are starting to be a little bit more maxed out on that ability, it's able to eat up just a little bit more of Shaliver's damage. Kaden was kind of just looking for that cutoff with the Thor wall, but just not enough time to be able to buy against Rival. So Jacob HL is going to be pretty safe for the most part.
But if you're Soar here, you gotta force an engagement here without the ultimate from Geb or the Blink, right?
I think they're looking for it. I mean, that's so much poke out damage onto Jacob HL. I wouldn't be surprised if he looks for a back here, and then when he does, Soar needs to jump right away into either that grouping in the middle lane and look for forcing another fight while he's gone.
Soar gonna clear out the mid, heading towards the Gold Fury, thinking about it, but it's actually Medieval Dog that's backing in that mini map, really wanting to complete some item here. Finishing off that Wing Blade is gonna give him that nice little health, extra mobility to get in position, and actually going for the horrific Emblem second relic instead of the Blink or the Shell.
You've got to appreciate the slows in a match like this. I mean, when you're trying to combat slows with slows, and I think the horrific Emblem could be very potent against Rival's draft.
Absolutely, Zaxi still always that 1-level lead, still out trading Dobson with this red buff of Chronos that's sitting at level 17, having so much mobility with this Wing Blade. I'm really surprised that he opted not to go for the Fatalis, but sometimes that extra health is really what you need to be able to get off your ultimate.
The health and the self-peel, he's going to have enough movement speed if that Wing Blade is procced anyway. So as long as he trusts in himself to land those auto attacks, I don't think he's going to be too concerned about anything else.
Heading into the 19-minute mark, neither team really wanting to flirt with the Gold Fury quite yet. We saw a lot of engagements by Jacob HL with his Blink Cataclysm Geb. Soar have decided to take their foot off the gas pedal with Kaden, not being on the mark with some of these Thor ultimates, really wanting to allow Rival to force the engagements and try to counteract that instead.
And not really a lead in either direction. I mean, you saw just a second ago, it was barely a 50 difference in XP. And when it comes to that little, you can tell the initiation wants to be made somewhere. Rapio eating a huge chunk of damage.
We were talking about the burst damage between Thor and Thoth. Despite that Geb shield being applied there onto Rapio, the damage is still being shown evident, taking about more than 25% of his health pool, and now with that little bit of poke, Soar feeling confident to at least position themselves around this gold. But
it's going to be Rival's Sentry World that's on the Gold Fury, so Soar definitely have to keep that in mind, that they might not necessarily have the vision superior to Rival. And what I'm really loving, though, about Kaden is that he opted for that Brawlers facing off against the Camazotz.
It's very important because not only does Camazotz have that sustain off of that second ability, but the way the passive works is whether there's a death on your side or the enemy side, you could sit in that pool, get some of that sustain back, and really fight in that puddle.
And both of these teams, I mean, we've gone over it time and time again, they're really just trying to feel each other out with this one. They don't really want to over-aggress or overextend, but the longer you let a game go without initiating any huge team fights, the longer those death timers start to climb.
Heading past the 20-minute mark, these respawn timers will start extending slightly, still not wanting to pull the trigger on the Gold Fury quite yet. The Sentry Ward and the regular warding around this objective has been favoring out Rival for the time being. Soar Gaming had the timing of the Oracles, but complete this objective, they'll get the 1-minute vision.
But Rival still has their Sentry Ward kind of just chilling on that Gold Fury, so either side's going to know if the other tries to jump onto it.
What's it going to take for some of these teams to start going for Gold Fury? Who's going to be the player to force it?
They need a pick. I think for Rival, what they're trying to do is they're trying to eliminate either Kaden or even potentially Zaxi, although Zaxi will be a much more difficult target to shut down. You kind of don't want to worry as much about Thoth because Shalimber's been playing a little bit more passive on this Thoth, kind of just trying to hug Medieval the whole time. So if they can cause a separation and just take out Kaden really, because he's the one that tries to initiate the fight.
It seems that he's been slowing down a little bit though, because his Thor ultimates has not been the most clean, I would say, compared to other players. So it seems that he's going to be relying on Medieval Doc, setting him up for some of these roots or the ultimates, maybe even Shalimber from a distance. Once he dashes in, extends that wall, that stun is going to hit from such a great distance. Not only that, Kaden can find some potential setup. I'm expecting Soar Gaming to really wait for Rival to kind of go in with that Blink Cataclysm and then wall everybody else off the same way Kaden did earlier on.
Well, the best engagements that Soar have had so far have been the counter engagement, so it's probably a better option for them to just let Rival instigate every single fight, because at least that way they know how to respond, and that could potentially be a drawback in the long run if they keep choosing to only respond to what Rival is putting out.
Did you see the damage that Shalimber did there? Just a
little
bit
kind of disgusting.
Without the Geb shield, Shalimber can really start chunking some of these members, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what he's going to do. Even chunking on Geb potentially would be good enough. He doesn't necessarily have to use his abilities on the wave every single time, and yet again, still finding a lot of damage onto Dobson.
I mean, we just talked about Shalimber's damage, but that was a pretty devastating amount of HP that Dobson just took from Zaxi, and that was only on, what, 2 abilities?
Sitting at level 19 Chronos, he has the Bancroft's Talon completed. Obsidian Shard having a lot of magical penetration. Starting up the Gold Fury, Kaden in the sky, looking for his target in the backline. Who's it gonna be? The Watson is gonna get dunked on, but a nice purification beat's buying him some time.
And now it's gonna be Kaden who's actually catching the counter engage from Rival. He's up in the air. I don't think that Dobson's gonna be able to find him.
Not able to find that last snipe from the Rama, but it's Jacob HL that takes the first spill in this engagement. Nice Aegis from Shalimber. He's trying to juke some of these bats. He even finds a kill before going down himself. So far, it's a 2-for-1 for Soar.
But Dobson's straight in the middle of everybody that he does not want to be surrounded by. Zaxi trying to get away now from Gnome and Rappi on the backside. Dobson trying to find the kill on Medieval.
Zaxi lives under the tier 2 tower with a great jukes. I'm really surprised there. Medieval Doc, though, he's going to fall back from the grave, actually, back from surviving the engagement, is Kaden making sure he zones everyone else away. So many deaths on both sides. 4 for 2 at the end of the day. I'm really surprised Zaxi survived that one.
That's favoring Soar every single time. I mean, when you're only losing 2 members and one of them's your support, that is a win every single time. Kaden now trying to put the beat down onto Gnome, who's actually going to be forced out of this Gold Fury area, and now this is Soar's Gold Fury to try and take away.
Shaliber now reviving. They don't have that really big oof burst damage to clean it up, but it's actually the nice rotation from Jacob. Unfortunately, mistiming his knockup, and that's going to be another death, though, for a rival. They lose the first Gold Fury of the game, and despite getting that first blood for their side of the squad, it's just not enough. Now Soar Gaming built themselves a 3,000 gold lead.
When you blink into 3 people, you kind of just gotta hope that the shockwave is going to be enough to secure it. Unfortunate circumstance for rival, and you gotta love this from Soar as well. Jumping immediately from the Gold Fury off of that pick from Jacob HL, straight to the Portal Demon, trying to keep the pressure going.
Kaden diving the backline, really trying to zone away Watson while the rest of his team is starting up this Portal Demon, really trying to secure it. It's gonna be going for Soar. Nice little final judgment from Shaliber. That bad out of hell from Rapio wasn't really enough damage to steal away that one.
A little bit lucky from Soar. Shaliber was slightly off the mark with the timing on that one. Portal Demon was alive with probably 1 HP.
That's always really unfortunate as a mage. You're sitting at level 17, you have a little bit of penetration with the boots and the Spear of Desolation, and you're expecting that ultimate to really obliterate it. You give a little bit of hope to your opponent, and then you just take it away anyway.
I think the main thing to take away from that engagement by Soar was Kaden going up in the air and immediately locking onto Watson, just forcing out his actives immediately, which permitted the rest of Soar to just kind of dump all of their damage onto Watson. And the way that everybody from Rival broke up just really allowed Soar to get in there.
Jacob forced to go into the Cataclysm just for the CC immunity, but getting completely eliminated by Zaxi, sitting at this level 20 Chronos. Nice little pull onto Rapio. Still not done yet, trying to find more kills, for having to go into the sky and trying to escape, but Zaxi's not having any of that one.
And now it's actually going to be Dobson trapped on the backside with 3 members of Soar surrounding him. Meanwhile, Stormy and Raze, he's a warrior. He's just chasing Watson down the entire time. Gnome able to find the return kill onto Zaxi at least, but Shaliber cleaning up Dobson as soon as he comes back down.
4 dead members from Rival, not on the mark with that final judgment, unfortunately. Could have been a deicide, but despite the death of Zaxi, a 4 for 1. They're able to find the tier 2 tower on the right-hand side, and I wouldn't be surprised here, Taco, if Soar Gaming go for Fire Giant.
I would prefer to see them wait for Zaxi to come back online, simply because you really want to let that Chronos, who's going to be the primary person for knocking out those objectives, have that Fire Giant buff surrounding him. And considering how dominant these team fights have been for Soar lately, I think it's pretty safe for them to wait until that moment arrives.
Sure, you're going to have level 20 Vamana on Gnome, still alive to contest it. Jacob HL had just revived as well. Having that Swift Wing, he's going to have the mobility to get towards that Fire Giant if necessary. So a nice little patient play from Soar Gaming, despite having the 4-on-2 power play.
I mean, playing with discipline is something that every team needs to adapt to, especially in a LAN environment. Soar have really been moving together as a whole unit, and that's kind of why they've been finding the favorable end of these engagements against Rival.
And Medieval Doc has been hitting some really nice pulls on some of these engagements, really doing a great setup with his ultimate, knocking up multiple Rival members, and it's just the sustain from those Wisps as well to be able to prolong the team fight.
And now it's going to be Jacob HL yet again, the focus here for Soar. Final judgment already out from Shaliber, really just trying to put down the Gnome.
Nice pull onto Gnome yet again, forcing out his ultimate. Rapio getting stunned out. He really wants to find the kill onto Medieval Doc. The snipes are not good, but Gnome with a big baby bat is going to find the kill.
Kaden's up in the air, though. He's not ready to let it go. Stacked up is Rival, and it's going to be Rapio falling down to Kaden.
Nice little cleanup by him. Zaxi finding one. Watson returning the favor onto Shaliber. Jacob HL nowhere to go. Kaden going to fall as well. A lot of dead members here from Soar Gaming.
And now it's Stormy Raze really just trying to pick out a target for who he wants to lock down. It's going to be the mage yet again. Zaxi on the run from Gnome.
So close with Umbrella Ring, but Stormy Raze is not done yet. It was a 3 for 3, but he's going to make that a 4 for 3 in his team's favor. Not going to be able to chase down the little baby, but instead, Soar Gaming still slightly on the better end of that one.
But that's the thing about Rival. They keep leaving Watson and Dobson alone. If these two, I mean, I get it. Zaxi's 1 HP. He probably shouldn't have survived in that situation, but at least try the peel that your mid laners need.
It's very difficult to lock down this Chronos that has the Wing Blade. We were talking about it before, just how much mobility this item provides, and that extra health, that 300 health, could be the difference between getting off that ultimate for a second life or just taking a spill in the graveyard.
Remember how low Zaxi was when he was running away from Gnome?
Was it the Bumbus Mask that gave him all that sustain, or just a
It
straight
wasn't
up
even the Bumbus. I mean, Bancroft as well.
Yeah.
Just all around, really smart because he doesn't even have...
Yeah, he sold it.
Yeah, okay. It's really just a lifesteal from that Bancroft combined with Chrono's kit as is. It just so much sustain on the side of Soar. And really the only anti-heal coming out of Rival is going to be Rapio with that Brawlers, but that's just not enough against this composition.
There's also a Pestilence from Gnome, so if he does dive the backline onto Zaxi, he could find some of that anti-healing as well. Soar Gaming trying to go for that Gold Fury on the left-hand side, do secure the second one in the game in their favor. Now with an 8,000 goal lead, but heading into the 30-minute mark, still a pretty comfortable lead here.
But nearly a 10,000 experience difference. I mean, 9.4K, that is pretty drastic, especially considering these two drafts.
Well, almost level 20 is Rapio, not too far out as other members as well. Shaliber finding a little bit of a poke onto Gnome. Nice little Geb shield, but it's Stormy Rays that always wants to be in that front line, getting off damage even against the enemy soul laner. It seems that if there's anyone forcing the issue, it's going to be Stormy Rays.
Stormy has just been all over the place for Soar. I mean, completely zoning out Watson, it feels like. At first, you thought that the Morrigan was really going to be able to take up off the air, but it's mostly just been Watson kind of ulting defensively on this Morrigan, typically using that Kazmazot's ultimate that he turns into to try and get away from Stormy Rays.
There's a difference of a playstyle between Watson on this Morrigan and the way Yaman was playing it yesterday on the Morrigan. Very sneaky Morrigan yesterday. Today, not so much, because it seems that Soar Gaming really have Watson's number. It's really difficult to get away, though, to be fair, against a Thor that can see you from the sky.
The problem is that Jacob HL is kind of just being made the focal target here for Rival yet again, trying to get the big Cataclysm off, and it is going to be Shaliber dying.
To lead it, but Zaxi getting answered in return. Jacob still very low, diving in the bat form. Stormy Rays finds one in return. Two of his members have been eliminated thus far. Kaden trying to run for his life. His hammer's on cooldown. So is his Aegis, finding a nice little double stun. The wall as well. The snipes needs to be good, connecting on the first and second, but a nice teleport from the hammer, avoiding the third.
Rival pretty much just caught Soar with their pants down. They were not expecting that one in the slightest, and now this is going to give them the opportunity to try and secure that Portal Demon.
It's going to be 750 gold to Rival's pocket. Not the worst case scenario if you're Soar Gaming. It's going to be secured by Rival. Nothing to worry about from their side of things, but I'm still a little hesitant to go for this Fire Giant if I'm the EU squad here.
No, they don't want to risk anything without having Jacob HL available. I think that in that instance, it was just Soar putting a little bit too much emphasis into the Geb player, and so able to get off that Cataclysm because of that grouping just allowed Rival to finally get their burst damage off.
This is not the same kind of level 5 Geb that you're looking at. You're looking at level 16 Geb. Rival trying to find Stormy Ray, stunning him out. Nice little counteraction from Medieval Doc, knocking multiple members up. Kaden into the sky, scaring Rival away, landing down onto only Gnome. Not the target you really want to lock down as a Thor player.
No, but I think Kaden was kind of just looking for one of the squishier members of Rival. However, they were able to disperse just in time, and now it's going to be all of Rival kind of just trying to get the retreat off.
Zaxi does not want to let this one go. He stuns Watson. He gets knocked up by Jacob Mitchell. Zaxi kills Watson. I think he was invisible there. No?
He was completely invisible, but he was still able to spot him out because he was running straight towards Zaxi, and now it's going to be no force into the Vamana ultimate, just trying to get away.
Nice little stun preventing the rollout from Jacob HL. The final judgment not on the mark to kill Gnome quite yet either, but finding that one kill onto Watson gives a 35-second power play for Soar Gaming for a 5v4.
I think Watson was trying to find that stun off onto Zaxi to turn that scenario around. Now Gnome, he was able to get his TP off in time, but Jacob HL is in a lot of trouble, surrounded by everybody from Soar.
And that's going to be two dead members from Rival now. A nice little power play. Now, if you're Soar Gaming, you might be feeling a little bit of confidence to go ahead for this Fire Giant objective. Kaden going to go into the sky, really trying to spot out Rapio, but he's going to catch Gnome instead. Sitting at about half health. No one else is quite in range to follow up, but instead getting that tier 2 tower in mid, gonna extend that goal lead even further for Soar.
I think Kaden caught Gnome's dash, but it didn't even matter because he didn't have the mana to follow up, unfortunately. But able to pick up that T2 tower, that's still so much gold all at once being added to Soar's pockets. They still are maintaining this 10K experience lead on top of Rival. And so what seemed like a slight flicker of hope for Rival was pretty much just taken away entirely after they made that FG attempt.
And I like what Rapio is doing. He's waiting in this mid lane just to see if there's anyone going to be out of position. Not only that, he's preventing the push from the Phoenix even further. Without a minion wave to complement Soar Gaming, you're not going to eliminate the backdoor protections, making the Phoenix Siege more difficult than it needs to be.
And Kaden already kind of just trying to get off as many hammer stuns and double taps as possible. This is the stage where Thor is really just that setup potential for Soar.
I mean, if you look at his items now, he has a decent amount of protections. He too has the wing blade. Not only that, he has the shifter shield, so that way if he does drop under 50% health, he'll get that extra protections. And if he does get CC'd, well, guess what? He has that spirit sword for that 15% damage reduction.
The sprint, I think, has been coming up pretty huge for Soar lately, whether they want to chase down everybody on Rival or are just looking to kind of disengage. All around, they've been able to maneuver as a unit, and that's kind of what we brought up at the start of this game, is whether or not they'd be able to stick together to make this composition work, and so far, they've done an excellent job of doing that.
Well, Soar and Rival are sticking together to try to make things work around this Fire Giant. Neither squad wanting to position themselves around the Gold Fury. It's just not as valuable quite yet. Kaden looking for his target. It's going to be actually Jacob HL. Every ability in the book dumped on that support.
He wasn't even able to get his Cataclysm off because of the setup, but now it's going to be Rapio getting so much poke. Dobson able to find Shalibur at the long-range snipe.
Stormy Rays getting dove as well. Rapio trying to eliminate him with Gnome, chasing down this Robin, not able to find that Umbrella Ring. Neither will the knockup, but Kaden and Stormy Rays will fall to Rapio and Watson.
But 3 members dead already for the side of Soar. Zaxby's trying to do everything he can with his Fatalis. Watson's up as another Camazotz, just trying to lock down this Chronos.
What's scarier than one bat is going to be 2. Watson transforming into that Camazotz. Medieval Doc is going to be the last remaining Soar member, but not for long. It's a deicide for Rival. They standing strong with 3 members. Do you think they do Fire Giant here, Talk?
This is a worst case scenario for Soar because Jacob HL is actually going to be spawning right now. They can pull this Fire Giant and the Geb can make it in time to tank up the rest of it. They have so much DPS between Rapio and Watson. This is a free Fire Giant for Rival.
Shalibur is going to be the first member from Soar to respawn in 5 seconds. No possible way for him to get into this one without a teleport. The first Fire Giant of the game going to the European squad. Rival making a statement here in this series, trying to get their first land victory.
And that just completely turned everything upside down for Soar. Now with this Fire Giant buff on the side of Rival, and Dobson was even able to spawn into that one. So it's just going to be so much push potential for this squad.
If you're a Rival now with Fire Giant, how do you cut this deficit? Do you go straight for the Gold Fury, or do you start grouping up in this dual lane?
You want to swing it, basically. That's kind of what you want to look for. So they can start by going for the Gold Fury because they already have that T1 tower still remaining in the dual lane. So if they swing from that left to right-hand side, or I guess right to left-hand side, depending on which way you want to look at the map, but either way, it's going to be such a massive, huge chunk of gold just coming their way.
They have 3 tier 2 towers remaining for Soar Gaming. 4,500 gold there. Tier 1 making it 5,000. About 2,500 to 3,000 gold for this Gold Fury to follow up. It's going to be quite a big of a swing here. Rival, they did have a deficit for majority of this game, but they're going to cut it all out once they get all these remaining towers.
They cut a 10K experience difference to less than 4,000. I mean, it's pretty much 3,000 and dwindling right now. This is a tied-up game all over again.
Absolutely. At 37-minute mark, experience is basically out the window. All your carries are sitting at level 20. The support is the last remaining struggling member, but that doesn't really matter as long as he's the same level as the enemy support. But now feeling very confident after that Gold Fury and Tier 1 tower. It's going to be Rival diving that backline. Jacob HL getting the beats out of Shalibur. Kaden trying to re-engage in the backline, connecting onto Watson, forcing out that Aegis. And he's going to try to retreat, but it's Jacob HL taking a lot of damage, forcing to retreat there.
It's still Shalibur, though, taking just as much damage from Gnome, and Dobson's up in the air, again able to find him with the long-range snipes. Watson forced out into that Morgan ultimate, trying to lock down Kaden, and he is going to fall to this Rom.
And Watson transformed into Rapio's Camazotz, that second bat yet again, doing wonders for Rival. They find 2 hits. Jacob HL barely surviving with that sustain from his Fire Giant, getting some more help from his Geb Shield as well. First Phoenix of the game falling, Rival doing work with his Fire Giant buff.
and Zaxi pretty much the only hyper carry left alive for Soar. This is going to be incredibly difficult to try and hold off these remaining T2 towers. I'm pretty sure that this is just free for Rival, and they could even potentially still push another Phoenix because of this Fire Giant regen.
It's also a long respawn timer for both Shaliber and Kaden. 20 seconds on mid-mage, 25 for that jungle. And that's exactly what Rival are going to do, Taco. They're going to go head down that middle Phoenix. They got the left one earlier on, and now they're going to try to catch out Zaxi. No, going to go into his ultimate. Going to be stomping down, but it's Watson falling to Stormy.
But it doesn't even matter because the middle Phoenix is still Rival's to take, even though they lost Watson. And now Stormy Rays kind of just trying to chase off everybody else from Rival, but Zaxi's got to be careful.
Zaxi switching his target at the last moment. Jacob HL showed his face and getting stunned out. No one from Rival could really be able to get more than just those two Phoenixes, but you got to be feeling really good about that one.
And just like that, this is pretty much Rival pushing so much of an advantage onto Soar now. Having the mid and left-hand Phoenixes removed just means that every other Fire Giant is pretty much no contest.
So what happened to Soar Gaming? Because they had such a comfortable lead, and everything just started dwindling away after that one engagement.
They just got caught out too many times from this Geb Cataclysm knockup. It just permitted Rival to get out that burst potential that they needed to lock down Shaliber. Shaliber kept getting forced out, and when he's retreating from the backline side, he doesn't have a Geb shield coming his way to give him that extra oomph of HP that he needs.
That's very true. Shaliber, though, he does have a decent amount of player damage on the charts here. We're going to see a lot coming from Zaxi as well, feeling very confident with his mobility, opting to change his build ever so slightly. He's really worried about some of this magical damage, going for this Bulwark of Hope on the Kronos. Not something that we're used to seeing here, Taco.
It's really just the Morrigan to me. I think that's the primary concern. That stun combination and then the invis to boot, it's just made Watson so dangerous on this Morrigan.
Do you think it's also to negate some of the damage coming out of Jacob HL with that Blink Cataclysm knockup?
I don't think so. I don't think it's as concerning for the Geb. You kind of just anticipate that to be a thing. You just want more survivability, because if Zaxi can stay alive, he can make the plays happen.
Kaden taking a lot of damage, forced to use that Aegis amulet, and he's actually going to have to back to base just to sustain some of his health back up. Fire Giant's going to respawn in 15 seconds. That's enough of a window for Rival to get their second one here, because it's going to be Soar Gaming defending their left side and middle against all these fire minions trickling down the lanes.
The main thing here for Soar is they just have to protect Shaliber. He can't afford to die, and he needs to start connecting with these final judgments. Unfortunately, he keeps catching them in that Aegis off of Kaden's ultimates, and now this is the opportunity.
Soar going in. They're not going to be able to find the stun yet again. Kaden is off the mark. Even using the sprint was Medieval Doc, and now it's Rival's turn.
And it's going to be Gnome immediately gunning straight for Zaxi, trying to lock out this backline and shut everybody else from Soar away from each other.
And the Titan is taking a lot of damage from the fire minions. Rapio diving with the bat out of hell. The snipes coming through as well. Zaxi getting off a little bit of return damage. Medieval Doc is going to be the first victim. It's going to be holding off some of the engagement with Zaxi. Taken out by Rapio.
That's the last place he wanted Kronos rewind to, but he had no other choice. Either pop the ultimate and get full HP and hope to get the escape, but now that just means that Soar are going to be missing 2 members. There's still a T2 tower remaining in that right-hand side for Rival, but having 5 members strong and a lot of push potential because of that ROM build from Dobson, I just don't see Soar really holding this one off for much longer.
And not only that, their Titan took about half of its health pool during that engagement, losing the team fight, losing the Fire Giant, losing half of their ultimate building structure remaining. It's not looking good here for the North American squad.
And it's going to be Kaden up in the air yet again. Rival just looking to close this one out. Kaden already picking up Dobson, but it doesn't even matter. The damage is too much to handle, and Rival